I moved into my apartment last year after landing my first full-time job. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, 2nd floor, older building, quiet area. I liked it because it was cheap and because I lived alone. No roommates. No noise. No drama. At least that's what I thought. The first month was completely normal. I worked, came home, watched Netflix, slept. Same routine every day. The only slightly odd thing was that sometimes I'd come home and feel like something was off. I couldn't explain it. Everything looked the same, but the air felt different. I blamed it on stress. Then small things started happening. One night, I came home and my bathroom light was on. I clearly remembered turning it off that morning. I even paused, trying to replay the moment in my head. I convinced myself I misremembered. A few days later, I noticed my bedroom window was unlocked. I never open it. Ever. The building is old, and the latch barely works, so I keep it shut. Again, I brushed it off. But the feeling didn't go away. It got worse. I started waking up tired, like I hadn't slept at all. Some mornings I'd find my blanket half on the floor, twisted in a way I didn't remember. One time, I woke up and my phone was unplugged from the charger and placed face down on my desk. That one scared me. I live alone. No one else has a key. A week later, I noticed food missing from my fridge. Just little things. 1 yogurt, a slice of bread. First, I laughed at myself. I thought maybe I was stress eating and forgetting. But one night, I counted. I counted everything before going to bed. The next morning, something was gone. That's when I stopped lying to myself. I bought a cheap indoor security camera and set it up in my living room. I told myself I was being paranoid, but I needed peace of mind. I angled it toward the front door and went to bed. The next morning at work, I checked the footage. First, nothing happened. Hours of empty apartment. I felt embarrassed for even setting it up. Then, around 2:17 a.m., the screen shifted slightly. Something moved. From the corner of the frame, near the hallway closet. The closet door opened. Slowly, a man stepped out. I dropped my phone. I remember my heart pounding so hard it felt painful. I picked the phone back up and watched the rest of the clip with shaking hands. The man looked thin, unshaven, wearing dark clothes. He stood there for a moment, just listening. Then he walked toward my bedroom. Toward me. I don't remember leaving work. I don't remember driving home. I just remember sitting in my car outside my apartment, staring at the building like it was no longer real. The police came. They searched the apartment. They found the closet. Behind the back panel, there was a crawl space, large enough for someone to fit. They found blankets, empty food containers, a phone charger that wasn't mine. The man was never caught. The building manager admitted the previous tenant had complained about noises but moved out suddenly. No one investigated further. I broke my lease that same week. I live with my sister now. She jokes that I'm paranoid because I triple-check the locks every night. I don't tell her the truth, because sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I still feel like someone is standing there, listening to me breathe. I didn't believe in bad feelings until the night I realized the road wanted me to stop. It was late January, the kind of winter night where the cold feels sharp instead of heavy. I was driving back to my apartment after visiting my parents for the weekend. I'd made the trip dozens of times before. Same rural highway, same empty stretches, same sense of relief once I got past the last small town. I left later than I should have, exhausted and foggy, with my phone battery hovering around 5%. The nearest town was miles away, but I wasn't worried. I just wanted to get home, crawl into bed, and forget the drive entirely. The snow had been falling lightly all evening, not enough to be dangerous, just enough to soften the edges of the world. My headlights carved 2 narrow tunnels through the dark. Everything felt quiet, too quiet. No other cars, no animals, just the hum of my tires and the steady rhythm of the road. That's when I noticed the mile markers. The first one was bent inward, like it had been hit by a car. I barely registered it. Accidents happen. Snowplows clip things. But then I passed another, and another, each one leaning toward the road at the same angle, as if something heavy had struck them repeatedly from the same direction. I remember thinking how strange it was that none of them were broken, just bent, like they'd been pushed instead of smashed. A few minutes later, my GPS froze. The screen went blank, then flickered back on, recalculating. I sighed and tightened my grip on the steering wheel. Technology failing in the middle of nowhere always makes things feel worse than they are. When the directions came back, my route had changed. Instead of the main highway, it wanted me to take a narrow side road I didn't recognize. According to the map, it would save me time. I hesitated. That bad feeling crept in, faint but persistent, like a hand resting between my shoulder blades. I told myself I was being dramatic. The main road was probably backed up or closed. I turned where the GPS told me to. The road was barely plowed. Snow clung to the surface in uneven patches, and my tires crunched louder than before. Trees pressed in closer on both sides, their branches sagging under the weight of ice. The farther I went, the darker it became. My phone buzzed once, low battery warning, then went black. Dead. Then my radio cut out. Not fading. Not static first. Just gone. 1 second there was a voice, the next there was nothing. No music. No hiss. No sound at all. The silence inside the car felt wrong, like the air had thickened. I tapped the dial, adjusted the volume. Nothing. That's when my car slipped. Just for a second. A small loss of traction that sent a jolt of adrenaline through my chest. I slowed down, heart pounding, breathing shallow. As I steadied the wheel, I glanced in the rearview mirror. That's when I saw the tire tracks. They hadn't been there before. 2 clean lines pressed into the snow behind me, darker and deeper than mine. At first, I told myself they were old tracks I'd missed. But as I drove, they stayed perfectly aligned. When I slowed, they slowed. When I sped up, they did too. I whispered, "No," without meaning to. My pulse hammered in my ears. I checked the mirror again. No headlights, no engine noise, just the tracks. Following me, I tried to rationalize it. Another car without lights. Someone being cautious in the snow. But the road was too narrow for that. There was nowhere to pass. Nowhere to turn off. Just trees and darkness. Then my engine died. No warning. No sputter. Just silence. The car rolled to a stop in the middle of the road. I sat there, frozen, my breath fogging the windshield. My hands shook as I tried the ignition. Nothing. Again. Nothing. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud and uneven. Headlights appeared behind me. They came on all at once, flooding the road with white light. No sound. No engine. Just light. My mouth went dry. I stared straight ahead, afraid to look in the mirror again. Then the headlights shut off. Darkness swallowed everything. Something knocked once on my driver's side window. Not a bang. Not a scrape. Just a single, deliberate knock. My whole body locked up. Couldn't move. Couldn't scream. I stared at the glass inches from my face, terrified that if I looked to the side, I'd see something looking back. My thoughts spiraled, fast and ugly. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. If I don't move, maybe it will go away. The knock didn't come again. Seconds stretched into something unbearable. Finally, shaking so hard my teeth clicked, I turned the key one more time. The engine started. I didn't question it. I didn't look in the mirror. I slammed my foot on the gas and drove. The road blurred past, trees streaking by like shadows reaching for me. I didn't stop until I saw lights ahead. Real lights. Street lights. Buildings. I pulled into a small town that felt wrong. The streets were plowed. The storefronts were lit. But there were no people. No signs welcoming me. No name I recognized. I drove until I found a gas station, parked, and sat there crying with my forehead pressed against the steering wheel. Later, when I tried to look the town up, it didn't exist. No record. No map. Nothing. I made it home eventually. I don't remember how. I avoid winter highways now. I take longer routes. I keep my phone charged. And if I ever feel that bad pull in my chest again, that quiet instinct telling me to turn back, I listen. Because some roads don't just lead somewhere. They're waiting. The note on my windshield proved someone had been watching me long before I noticed them. I was 27 at the time, freshly moved into a quiet apartment complex in a small Midwest town. It was the kind of place people describe as safe without thinking too hard about it. 2-story buildings, decent lighting, mostly young professionals and a few older couples. I worked night shifts at a medical supply warehouse, which meant I usually got home sometime after midnight, when the parking lot was nearly empty and the air felt colder than it should. I liked the solitude at first. The quiet felt earned after long, exhausting shifts. I'd park, grab my bag, and walk to my unit with my keys threaded between my fingers out of habit, not fear. I'd only lived there about a month when I found the first note. It was tucked under my windshield wiper. White paper, folded neatly, no envelope. I remember thinking it was a parking warning or a flyer. When I opened it, there were just 3 words written in blocky handwriting. You park crooked. I stood there longer than I should have, rereading it while my breath fogged the air. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't even rude. Just specific. I looked around the lot. There were only 3 other cars, all dark, all quiet. No one nearby. I crumpled the note and told myself it was a bored neighbor trying to be funny. 2 nights later, there was another one. This time it said, you get home late. That's when the discomfort set in. Not panic. Just a tightness in my chest. A slow realization that someone wasn't just noticing my car. They were watching me. I threw the note away and went inside, locking the door behind me and double-checking the deadbolt even though I'd never done that before. Over the next week, the notes kept coming. You always carry the black bag. You check your phone before unlocking the door. You leave at 4:30 p.m. on Fridays. Each one chipped away at the sense of safety I'd built for myself. They weren't left every day, just often enough to keep me unsettled. I started scanning the parking lot before getting out of my car, listening for footsteps, watching reflections in windows. My sleep became lighter, restless, like my body knew something my mind was still trying to deny. That's when I noticed the sedan. It was dark, navy or black, always parked near the far end of the lot, never in the same space twice, but always close enough to see my building. I tried to tell myself it belonged to someone on night shift like me, but it was there even on my days off, even when I came home early, even when I left later than usual. The windows were tinted. I never saw anyone get in or out. The worst note came on a Tuesday night. I found it taped to my door right at eye level. My hands shook as I peeled it off. I already knew somehow that this one would be different. Nice shower tonight. My stomach dropped. I stood there in the hallway, heart racing, every sound suddenly too loud. No one should have known that. I hadn't told anyone. I hadn't posted anything. I hadn't even turned on the bathroom fan. I went inside and locked the door, then checked every room with a kitchen knife in my hand, my pulse pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Nothing was out of place. No open windows. No signs of forced entry. That night I didn't sleep. At exactly 2:38 a.m., my door handle rattled. Once, twice, slow, careful. I sat up in bed, frozen. My breath caught in my chest as I listened, every nerve screaming. Then someone whispered my name. Soft, close, familiar enough to make my skin crawl. "Hey," they said. Just that. The lights went out. Total darkness. No hum. No glow. Just black. I slid off the bed and crouched beside it, holding my phone in my shaking hands. I didn't dare turn on the flashlight. I didn't want them to know where I was. Footsteps ran down the hallway outside my apartment. Fast. Heavy. Then the sound of the stairwell door slamming open. I didn't move for a long time. When the police came, they were polite, calm, skeptical in the way that makes you feel foolish for being afraid. They checked the door. No damage. No sign of forced entry. One of them asked if I'd recently given anyone a key. I hadn't. That's when I checked the spare. It was gone. I moved out within a week. Broke the lease. Didn't argue about the fee. I packed with the lights on, the TV playing for noise, my heart jumping at every sound. I never saw the sedan again, but that didn't make me feel better. It made me feel like it didn't need to be there anymore. I live somewhere else now. Different town, different routine. But every night before I sleep, I check the door handle. And sometimes when it doesn't move, I wonder if that's really what safety feels like. Or if it's just what we tell ourselves when we're lucky enough to still be alive. If you made it this far, subscribe for more true horror stories like this one. The motel room was cheap for a reason, and I realized why far too late. I was 32 and in the middle of a cross-country drive for a job relocation. It was January, and winter had already made the trip harder than it needed to be. Snow followed me across state lines, sometimes light and quiet, sometimes thick enough to erase the road. That night, it turned into a full storm. Wind pushed the car around, visibility dropped to almost nothing, and I knew I wasn't making it any farther. The town I stopped in barely felt real. One main road, a gas station with a flickering sign. Everything else looked closed or abandoned. The only motel sat just off the highway, its sign buzzing softly in the snow. I didn't care how it looked. I just wanted a bed. The lobby smelled like old carpet and something sour underneath it. The clerk was an older man with tired eyes and a face that didn't move much when he spoke. I walked up to the counter, reaching for my wallet, when he slid a key card across the surface. "Room 12, he said. I froze. "I haven't." "You're checked in," he added, already looking past me. I told myself he'd overheard my name when I walked in. Or maybe he'd read it off my credit card faster than I noticed. I was exhausted, cold, and not thinking clearly. I took the key and left. Room 12 was on the ground floor, near the end of the building. The parking lot outside was mostly empty, just my car and two others dusted with snow. The room itself was plain, beige walls, a thin blanket, a heater that rattled when it kicked on. I locked the door, dropped my bag, and sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the wind howl outside. I almost slept. What stopped me was the sound of footsteps. They moved slowly along the walkway outside my room, crunching softly in the snow. At first, I assumed it was another guest, but the lot was empty, and the steps didn't stop at any door. They passed mine, then came back. I held my breath, listening. The steps faded. Silence returned. I told myself I was on edge from the drive and lay back down, staring at the ceiling. That's when the door handle moved. Not hard, not fast, just a slow turn. Twice. I sat up so quickly my head spun. Whoever it was didn't knock, didn't speak. They just tested the handle, like they were checking whether I'd remembered to lock it. I stayed still. After a few seconds, the pressure on the handle eased. I waited longer than felt reasonable before moving again. My hands were shaking when I walked over to the desk. That's when I saw it. A second key card. It was sitting beside my wallet, perfectly aligned, like it had been placed there on purpose. I stared at it, my stomach tightening. I knew exactly how many things I'd set on that desk. That card hadn't been one of them. I backed away slowly, my mind racing. Had someone been in the room? Was the door even locked the whole time? I checked it again. Still locked. Still solid. The bathroom light turned on. I jumped back, heart slamming against my ribs. I hadn't gone near the switch. The door was open just enough to let the light spill across the carpet. Then I heard breathing. Close. Slow. Wet. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. Someone was on the other side of the door. A shadow slid across the gap at the bottom, blocking the light for a second before moving away. My phone buzzed once in my hand, then the screen went dark. No signal. No battery warning. Just gone. I didn't think. I moved. I grabbed my coat and bag, crossed the room on shaking legs, and shoved the bathroom window open. Cold air blasted in, sharp and burning. Snow rushed inside. I climbed out and dropped into it, the shock knocking the breath from my lungs. I ran. The snow was deep and uneven, soaking my shoes instantly. I didn't look back. I didn't care where I was going. I just ran until my chest burned and my legs threatened to give out. I kept running until the sky began to lighten and the storm eased into a quiet drift. When the sun finally rose, I was miles from the motel. I flagged down a truck on the highway and didn't explain much. The driver didn't ask. I never went back to that town. I didn't report the motel. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not really. I finished the drive in one stretch, sleeping in my car when I had to, too afraid to stop anywhere that felt too empty. I don't stay in roadside motels anymore. Not ever. Some places don't just offer rooms. They remember who checks in. If you made it this far, subscribe for more true horror stories like this one.